Hello. Welcome to another episode of Ancient Office Hours by the Ozymandias Project. Trireme Transit is now boarding for all new and returning passengers. Now departing, present ponderings. Next stop is Ancient Office Hours at a library lost in the sands of time.
Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 52 of Ancient Office Hours. This week, my guest is Dr. Christina Hotalen, a social media manager for Invicta History, the YouTube channel. She holds a BA in Classics and PhD in History from the University of South Florida, concentrating on the late Roman Empire. Her research interests include gender and sexuality, identity, material culture, digital humanities, and classical reception in metal music. In this episode, we discussed how growing up in a Greek-American environment influenced her path into classics and history, the difficulties of doing public outreach while working a full-time job, and the pleasure of watching ancient film adaptations with a buddy. I hope you enjoy this episode, and if you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and review us on Apple or Spotify. You can also subscribe to our Patreon, as this will allow us to reach more people and make more exciting ancient world content. Enjoy! Thank you so much for joining me this evening, morning, whatever it is. And I just want to get the ball rolling and ask you how you got into classics.
I guess my interest has always been there. I feel like the way I grew up, the things I was exposed to, especially being like half Greek and all, that really plays a big role into why and how I got into ancient studies and classics and ancient history the way that I did. But even things like Tomb Raider, I remember watching my sister playing Tomb Raider on the PlayStation 1 back in the day. That was something that really interested me, was just the antiquities and the aesthetics of it. It just looked really cool. And then, I remember watching like Disney's Hercules. That was like another really big thing that triggered my interest. And then it wasn't until I took a classical mythology class in middle school as like a 13-year-old kid that grew my interest, but I never knew studying this was a thing. I didn't know that until I was ready to declare a major for my undergrad, for my bachelor's degree. And at the time when I was starting it, I had always been interested in art. I thought I was going to do art history or fine arts, since I was always doing things like that. But after talking to my family about it, they're like, well, you can't really do a whole lot with art. Necessarily doesn't pay the bills. That's just the way they think about that stuff. And so I thought I was going to do something entirely different, like law school, because I just thought, all right, well, I'm not going to become a medical doctor, so maybe I can try a legal pursuit. And when I was looking for majors to declare, I saw classics being offered. And I had read and done some research that classics majors are really well-rounded. They get into law school. It really helps for a career like that. And plus, it covered a lot of things I was interested in, like the art, humanities, covered a little bit of everything. And at that point, I didn't really know what exactly I wanted to do, but I figured, well, why not? So I did that, and that sort of just spiraled into me studying history later, and I really liked antiquity, and that was the start of it all, so to speak. So yeah, it was a lot of things that led to me declaring myself as a classics major and then eventually going for a master's and PhD.
Hey, I mean, no shame sounds like a lot of people I've talked to, actually, where some people were like, I'm on it, I got this, I know exactly what I'm doing. Others were well, I don't know this exists, but I found it and I'm going to do it. And then some were like, emergency, I need something else. Okay, I guess I'll do this. And then, ended up loving it. So yeah, overall, not too unconventional. I feel like at this point, having talked to so many different people about how they got into classics, there's no right way or wrong way. There's just, how did you get in? But, welcome, you're here now. So
yeah, and whereas some people take like Latin in high school, I never took Latin at all. If anything, I took modern Greek because that's what my high school offered. Being in the area that I live in, it's predominantly a large Greek population. So that's just what the school had offered. I mean, I feel like my environment, cultural upbringing had a lot to do with that too. But it definitely wasn't until I was ready to declare majors for my bachelor's degree that I found it, because it was the most appealing. It covered the most things that I was interested in. And I met some really cool people and have read some really cool stuff. So can't complain.
Nice, nice. And so once you did choose the field, how did you go about sort of figuring out what you were into and what you might want to specialize in? Because I know that's a really broad thing, and there's so many different options and ways you can go. So for some people, it's super easy because they just know what they like, and some people, they really have to sample everything.
Yeah, because my classics program was very much heavy on the languages, I realized that languages wasn't my thing. It wasn't my strongest suit. And so at that point, when I realized how language heavy the program was and what I'd be expected to do much later in grad school, I wanted to take some classes in the humanities. So I took some classes on like women in antiquity, and that class was just amazing. That is what sort of got me interested and ended up where I am, or what I ended up doing in my PhD later. But like I took classes on ancient Egypt, I took Roman archaeology classes, some classes in art. They weren't offered by the art history department, but they were taught within the humanities. And so I tried to take as many ancient related classes as I could, including ancient philosophy. I went so far as philosophy at one point, but it wasn't until I had started talking to more people outside of classics in the history department that I realized there's a lot more I could do with classics that wasn't just language and textual based. At that point, I was being introduced to like new things like comparative literature, or at least within history, it was digital humanities as being the big thing. And, that was very appealing to me at that point.
I feel like the majority of classicists end up being Hellenists, not Latinists.
Yeah.
So when confronted with the Greece and Rome thing, how did you make that decision?
Being Greek, I wanted to study the Greeks because I wanted to learn more about myself and I guess my heritage, so to speak, my history. Unfortunately, my classics program, they cut the third and fourth semester of ancient Greek classes when I was getting ready to do it. So I had to make the immediate jump to Latin. And I did Latin 1 and 2 over the summer, which was hell on earth because it's such an accelerated pace. It was a lot to handle, and I just had to go through with all 4 semesters of it. That was that was a lot. And unfortunately, because of that cancellation with the Greek class, I could have taken other classes, but at that point I was just focusing on the Latin stuff if it meant getting my prereq done and out of the way. So that's how I ended up studying Latin mostly. But it's funny because where I ended up getting my degrees from and everything, there were some Greek people, there were some Greek scholars, but they didn't do what I wanted to do, which was I wanted to look at material culture and cultural gender history and all that. And one of the people I could work with was in Roman history. And so that's how I became a Roman historian. But I don't look at it like a compromise necessarily. I mean, things turned out the way that they did. I really like the Romans. I appreciate what the Romans have done as much as I appreciate Greek history. Just worked out that way.
I found that so unique. I was like, okay, here's someone who's like got Greek heritage. So of course she's just gonna go study the ancestors. And then I'm like, no, she's into Rome. Wait, what?
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
I mean, my people were colonized by the people I ended up studying. Go figure.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay, sure. So I think that's kind of cool though, because I feel like, especially the Greeks or the people of Greek, heritage that I speak to, definitely were like, no. Of course, I went Greek. Obviously. Right. So it's kind of fun to find someone who didn't, go on into that. So by the time you got to graduate study, can you talk just a little bit about, how you went through the process of sort of picking specific subject and, how did you whittle that down? And because, there's a lot in Roman history and there's a lot that can be done with gender studies. So, how did you pick your specific topic?
It's a journey. So when I first started graduate school, I was actually opting to work in late antiquity. I was planning to work under a professor who was a Byzantinist, just because he was one of the people in the department that seemed the most eager and willing to work with me at the time, especially because of the digital humanities approach. It was so new and different for the program. That's the only reason why I able to get into the program as sort of an ancient historian, was because I wasn't focusing on just languages like most people would traditionally have to do. And at that point, I had basically decided that I wasn't going to go into academia. I knew I wasn't going to be competitive for the job market. I'm not wrong in a way. And that's okay with me. I didn't want to go into academia at that point, knowing the challenges that I was going to be faced with. Not that alt-ac has been a walk in the park by any means, but it's certainly been a lot easier to navigate the industry market than academic market. But it's a conversation for another day. But yeah, so I started out as sort of a late antique person, and then things didn't work out with that professor, where they got busy with other obligations and things, and so I ended up finding a new advisor into my third year of my PhD. And it worked out fine because this professor was very eager to work with me. Her research interests is very much aligned with mine more than my original advisor. She was the one who actually suggested that I work within the third century, because that's an area that hasn't really been touched upon. I mean, it has been in the political and military scholarship, most importantly. But as far as what I was doing with the material culture and gender, especially imperial women, that really hasn't been explored a whole lot. So that was really how I got into it, was on the suggestion of my advisor, who understood what I wanted to do and how I can make an original contribution to the field while including my own interests and research into that.
Nice. Well, sometimes all it takes is like that one amazing mentor advisor.
Yeah.
I had several good ones, although of course they, weren't into sort of the same thing I was, but it was fine because they were great mentors anyway. And I knew I wasn't even going to go into grad school for classics. I knew it wasn't for me. So I congratulate you for going through and then, working hard to find something that worked and then getting through it. And then since you did know at that point that you wanted to go into alt-ac and weren't going to go in like straight into proper academia, how did you find sort of coming out of the PhD and then sort of attacking the alt-ac job market? Because I think, a lot of people just kind of think, well, if I'm going to get the degree, you might as well try to do something sort of related, historical, something, blah, 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 blah. There are a ton of options out there, but I don't think people think through all of them.
Yeah. For me, I was having to figure it out on my own. I mean, I had help from other people who've been working a corporate job, whatever, as far as what things to do, what not to do. But as far as looking for careers and jobs go, I read a lot of blogs and articles on, life after PhDs, alt-ac careers for the humanities graduates. I read and kept up with all those articles. And it's also important to bear in mind that I was finishing my PhD like in the early months of the pandemic when things had just shut down, so that March, I was still writing my dissertation, trying to finish it. And there was a lot going on too, like in America at that point. There was a lot of distractions. There was a lot. So the job market was really hard for a while. And it didn't occur to me until later that after talking with some other people that there were career options in cultural resource management, but to get into a job like that is incredibly hard. At least in my experience, it was really hard to find full-time work versus part-time contractual work. And it wasn't until I was looking on the federal government's jobs website that I found my first foray into that, which was historic preservation with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So they handle the natural disasters that happens within the United States and its territories. And I was able to get hired as a historic preservationist, which was really good at the time. But because that was part-time reservist work, I never really got called out for that specific position. I was called out for the federal vaccination stuff because that's when the government needed people. But as far as my actual job title goes, I never really got to do it. So it wasn't until a few months later when I got home from my first deployment with FEMA that I ended up I was actually approached for my current job as a social media manager for a YouTube channel. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And that has been far more rewarding and fulfilling. Plus, it gives me the opportunity to use my degree. I get to work with this stuff. It's really the best of both worlds in that respect.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. I will say I kind of have like an extra level of respect for people who were literally finishing degrees during the pandemic, like right when that happened, because I'm sure everyone had a great idea of kind of hopefully how immediately, after finishing would sort of have gone. And then to be slammed with, okay, well, now we're quarantined. Now we're at home. Now everything's remote. Now you can't do this. So
and I was always one of those people. I always said that I was never going to be that person defending my dissertation, not knowing if I had a job or not after I finished. I was always that person who said, that's not going to be me. I'm going to hustle and hustle. And I did. I really worked. I looked, I applied for everything I thought I was, perfectly, suitable to do. And none of it just fizzled. I mean, none of it came to fruition. It was frustrating for sure. We're dealing with like people getting laid off left and right. And yeah, it was rough. It still is.
Yeah.
It's not any better, but
no, certainly not, which is super sad. But yeah, no, I mean, you definitely got thrown quite the curveball. Everyone at that time got thrown such a curveball. So I'm like, literally, seriously, kudos to people for seeing it through, because, I'm sure that somewhere along there might have been the temptation to be like, oh God, okay, the world's changed. So like, am I in a position where I have to do this? Or I know 2 people who were doing their PhDs and then actually left ABD because they were like, it's too much. I can't. Now I have responsibilities and I can't do it. So I know they're hoping to go back and finish eventually, but yeah. So, kudos to you to making it out, and then additionally having to hustle and find something.
Right.
Since you got you had the interest and, there was something going on with digital humanities. And I tend to notice that people who like digital humanities also like the, public outreach stuff. And so even if that's not your full-time job, how do you still manage to find time to sort of work on individual projects within that? And, could it turn into something eventually maybe that you might be able to do full time as some kind of independent scholar eventually, like if you are passionate enough about it? Or is it something that's kind of like, nah, it probably has to remain like a side project thing?
I think for right now, it's only a side project thing that I can sort of do. I try to make time for it on the weekends with my work schedule, just because I have my own research responsibilities and obligations for the YouTube channel. But as far as my public outreach goes, it's one of those things that if I can get to it, I can get to it. It's just, I don't have a set schedule for it, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that I can really commit to. And I don't know, that may be the ADHD too, but I do my best with it. Yeah.
Okay. No, hey, that's a perfectly suitable answer because, I'm definitely one of those people who I'm still kind of sitting here like I haven't graduated yet. I'm still going to be trying to enter the workforce, hopefully in Europe. But, definitely try to keep my eyes and ears open, because if I can sort of carve out a space in public outreach, just like digital humanities, I would love to do that full time. I don't know how optimistic I am about seriously being able to pursue it, also because I found that I haven't like settled on the term for like what to call this, just to be sort of polite, but there's like a credibility gap when you are someone who doesn't have at least like a PhD, even if you don't work in academia proper. Like, I feel like there is some sort of inherent disadvantage where somehow you're thought of as less credible if you don't have the piece of paper. And same with, if you don't have experience, being a proper TA or teacher, if you have no teaching experience. Like, I find that people sort of take everything you say with a grain of salt, and then they're like, okay, that's cool, and then sort of run to like the quote unquote real experts, which is
Right.
that doesn't really inspire confidence.
I can relate to that. Being like a junior scholar, I feel like people don't, I don't know, maybe they don't refer to me as an expert or like think of me like one for whatever reason, because I'm so fresh, so to speak, especially if you don't have like the sort of connections with publishing, or if you're really not a big publisher or writer, it's hard to establish yourself. And for me, it's like, oh gosh, like sometimes writing is just daunting for me. But that's only because I don't have the time to dedicate to just writing all the time like I used to. Even then, it's hard. It's competitive.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I don't know, like, how do we make that better? I mean, because obviously we're always going to have, new baby academics coming up through the ranks, but like, I don't know, have you encountered like a lot of, oh, because you're so new, you're not seen as like a credible expert yet? Or do you still feel like, compared to, someone who only has an MA or something, like, do they still sort of trust your knowledge a little more? Are you afforded that, basically?
I haven't really had many opportunities to like deal with that, I guess. Like, I haven't really been asked a whole lot to partake in anything or to lend my credibility, my expertise for something, I should say. But what I do too is also very niche, I guess. I mean, as far as like what my research goes. So maybe that's a reason why. Otherwise, I have no problem just doing what I'm doing now for social media, as far as what I do for myself and what I do for work. And as long as I can, continue producing the sort of work that I am very passionate about doing, then that's what matters to me. I mean, I don't know if that answered the question. I sort of derailed for a second.
No, you're fine. You're fine. It makes sense, but I don't know. Some people say they feel it. Some people are like, no, I really haven't felt it. So, I mean, it's probably good, right, that you haven't had to confront not being seen as like expert on something yet, right?
Honestly, I think it's my imposter syndrome still that I'm still feeling. It's a really hard thing to shake off after being
Okay.
the academic trenches for so long.
Yeah.
And apparently that's something even other like friends of mine and other colleagues deal with still, to some degree, until they get to the position where they want to be at, I guess. We'll see.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, while we're waiting for someone to come to you and ask you to lend your credibility to some hopefully wonderful new project, maybe, consulting for some TV series or game or something really cool.
The dream. Right?
Well, I was going to say, okay, if someone were to come to you and say, hey, so like you've done gender studies, you've done women, you've done a period of time that, has been done militarily, but not really in other contexts a lot. What kind of cool movie media project thing would you like to hopefully see come to fruition?
I'd like to see something on the Severance docu-series, or like a drama on the Severance. There's so much to unpack with like even just the women of the Severan dynasty, as far as like how influential they were in creating emperors and whatnot and setting policies. That would be fantastic. I also think the third century needs some representation as well. As far as like a really good like docu-series go, I mean, you could do like a whole series on the third century if you want to do it from like the military and political stuff. There's a lot to go over, plus it's spicy with the turnover of emperors. We all like that. But even like just something on the women behind the men, that would be really great as well. And yeah, that's all I can really think of. I mean, if I want to go earlier, I mean, we could say, let's do a series on Sulla. That would be really fun. Or even...
Yeah, I'm trying to think like, okay, well, what things we have that were done about like ancient Rome that were good and not just, complete crap. I mean, okay, so do you have favorite Roman series?
I liked HBO's Rome while it was really good. I mean, I understand like, what happened with the show as far as the budget cuts and all that, but I thought that was really fun. Spartacus was fun too. I mean, there were things that I thought were kind of ridiculous as far as like the special effects go and all that. The dramatic overacting was quite comical from time to time, I can't lie, but I do appreciate that they were showing more of like the lesser people, like, they're giving perspective to people that we never hear perspectives from, like the slaves. And they were showing a relationship between two men in a very positive way, or as positive as it gets for one of those shows especially. And that's all I can really think of right now. I'm supposed to be watching I, Claudius. I keep saying I'm going to, but it's just one of those things I keep forgetting about.
It's fine. Hey, I remember catching you watching Rome. I remember the long threads. Those were so entertaining to read. I remember I was, I'm not super active on Twitter. I just kind of lurk and I liked seeing people's stuff. But I remember I was like, no, I wish I could set like a reminder for the, when these threads are expanded, these are fantastic. It was like, that is the way to watch a series.
It's one of those things I would love to do with other like scholars and other just people that are just as into this stuff as me. I love the idea of viewing parties. I wish I could make that into a thing. I like talking to other people about it on Twitter. That's one of my favorite things about Twitter, is having been able to establish this community of scholars and just fans and enthusiasts, and we just get to talk about this sort of stuff, this nonsense with other people.
Yeah, because that's where you're going to find people who are just as nerdy as you are, but like,
I've heard of Twitter for a lot of, like, we talk shit about Twitter being like this hellhole.
Terrible.
Yeah, terrible and just the worst place. But, when I started getting active on Twitter in 2019, it was when I had just moved back home from Tampa because I was finishing my dissertation. And this was just before the pandemic started. And so I was home all the time. I was teaching online before the pandemic. I was writing my dissertation. And it's because of Twitter that I found this community of classicists and other ancient historians that I've been able to talk to and hang out with. And truthfully, Twitter is how I got my current job, to be honest. I mean,
yeah,
it's where I get to talk about my scholarship. It's where, I get to engage with people about this stuff. It's how I found opportunity. It's been really great in that respect. Who would have thought?
I know. No, as much as I complain about how much I hate Twitter, I cannot shy away from the fact that I've made such good friends in classics that I never would have met or heard of or made contact with otherwise. So yeah, I've like been on Twitter with my personal account for years, and I kind of just lurked, and I was like, I was at the point where I was like, I'm just gonna shut this thing down because I don't really use it for much other than like looking at what other people say and finding something funny occasionally in cats. But when I started Ozymandias Project, I was like, I feel like I should be on there just in case. And then I discovered like the whole community of classics Twitter, and then I was like, I guess I'm not leaving.
Yep.
For every dumpster fire, I make like 2 more friends. So I was like, okay.
Yep.
All right then. So it finds a way to hook you back in. So
yeah,
I am grateful to it, even if it can be shitty. I am grateful to it for opportunities and meeting folks and stuff. So I'm like,
yeah. I mean, it's a really great community of people where I feel like that was the one place I feel like I could like be very expressive about myself and talk about my research interests without like getting too much pushback or like, why are you studying that? Or that's women's work. I got told that once by someone in my program. Yeah.
Rude.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the problem of being in a predominantly modernist history program with a bunch of dudes. Yeah. So when I got on Classics Twitter, it was a total fresh of the fresh air.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just a very warm reception for the most part. And people seemed genuinely interested in what I was doing because, I mean, especially with the 3rd century, it's like 3rd century who?
Mm-hmm.
I was like that to a certain extent before I decided, I think I'll make this my dissertation.
I feel like there's such a bias though for like 5th century anything or late Bronze Age or some sort of,
Yeah.
Minoans or whatever. So to be honest, when we would even, if we were lucky enough through my semesters, if we could cover some things in the 4th century, people were like, oh, that's different. That's like unexplored territory, because we never get to that. We never have time because we're so stuck in the 5th century. So honestly, the 3rd century to me is even more foreign than the 4th century. And the 4th century is like still pretty foreign, beyond just, Alexander and stuff. I'm just like, what is happening in the world in this time period? Like, I know things exist. I know things are happening. I just don't remember. And then, of course, I like get reminded of like some emperor or some world event. And I'm like, oh, I know that. Wait, was that in the 3rd century? And then I'm sitting here feeling like super dumb, because then I'm like, that was in the 3rd century? What?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it kind of fun though to be able to be like, oh yeah, I did my research in the 3rd century, and then have most people be like, I don't know anything about the 3rd century. What?
It's great. I mean, especially because I didn't even have to travel like a whole lot to do this research, because it was all readily available online. What little evidence there is to be had, I was able to get my hands on it digitally. It was fantastic. So there wasn't a whole lot to work with, but what I was able to work with was very manageable, especially because like I'm writing a dissertation that I was able to sort of use for interviews if it really came down to it, and actually show people, like, because I did a digital component to the written stuff. So my actual written dissertation is fairly modest compared to what normal history dissertations are, which were like maybe well over 200 to 300 pages minimum. Mine was about 180 pages, but I also had the digital component, which was the database and the website. And so my topic and what I chose to write on were really quite handy as far as like what my post PhD goals and aspirations were. So I was able to write a manageable dissertation, do what I needed to do, and it was doable for the most part. I mean, I'm not going to say a dissertation was easy, because it wasn't, but compared to like what I've seen of other dissertations, I felt it was very doable. So, and that's the sort of the benefit of working within the 3rd century, depending on what it is that you're working on. Like there's only so much remaining evidence, for the specific period. You kind of just have to grab what you can in.
Hey, it makes sense. And hey, there is a benefit to choosing a topic that is not overdone, because then you can just use that as your playground and be like, well, if y'all are not doing this, I guess I will. And I have all the resources at my disposal. Like, have fun going and traveling and trying to get your hands on all these obscure things. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely makes it easy to like carve out a name for yourself too within the field. If there hasn't been a whole lot done on it, then it gives you a little bit of wiggle room to put your stake in there.
Yeah, hey, maybe getting there, it was kind of like dumpster fire. But you know what? At the end of the day, the way it like appears when you're like on the other side of it is like, oh yeah, this is part of my master plan to, have this lane, and look at me, I'm ahead of the curve now. So it's pretty freaking awesome. So I think I saw that you're working on the Lego Coliseum. Is that still a thing that you're doing?
I finished it.
You finished it?
I just finished it the other day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
how was it?
That crazy ass idea of tweeting out, if I reach certain amount of followers, I'm going to build this Coliseum on live stream. I didn't realize it was going to take off, to be honest. I just thought like, okay, 60 hits on it. Didn't expect it to go as viral as it did, but it sort of did. And I was able to convince my work to let me do that for the social medias that yours truly manages. And I have video footage recorded of it, and I plan to release that on the social media pages every so often. It's basically just a fun way of talking about the Colosseum, the historical aspects of it, like the facts, in addition to building a Lego Colosseum by a Roman historian with no Lego building experience. That was sort of the fun of it, and people were drawn to that. And I believe TikTok will find that very fascinating and entertaining as well.
Because I was thinking about it and I was like, well, it's kind of brilliant because not only does it have immense entertainment value, apparently, which is awesome, but I was like, I think you also opened up another new method of maybe using that to teach people about it. So it's like if you're teaching a class on the Colosseum, as you build the sections where things are going, you could teach a thing and be like, let's build the thing that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that popped in my mind and I was like, this is so cool. You could do like your own little like Colosseum tutorial via building it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm planning to do that with the Pyramid of Giza set that is set to release soon. I would
I want it.
I want an Egyptologist to be on the stream with me and talk me through it, so it could be more of a collaborative thing, but it would also just be a fun way of bringing more people onto the stream. And my problem with the Lego Coliseum was there were so many interruptions and distractions between having to move it from one place to another place. And then with my traveling over the past month and a half to Boston and then to England, I couldn't ever establish a consistent schedule for the streaming. So if I'm able to do that next time with the Pyramid of Giza and hopefully as a collaboration with someone, I'm hoping it'll be even more successful and I can get more people to actively watch it. Because for the first few times that I was doing the stream, I was definitely going over the historical stuff of it. And then there came a point where I just wanted to finish it. So I would just build it and then just take questions from people who were just watching it and just answer questions that way.
Yeah.
And it didn't always have to be about the Colosseum specifically. It could be about Roman history. I was just talking about the movie Gladiator the other night with someone.
Yes.
Netflix Roman Empire series.
Okay.
I was just taking questions that way, but I'm planning to do it again with the Pyramid of Giza set.
Okay.
So I would love to have other people on there to talk about pyramid stuff with me.
Yes. Well, I mean, based on when this episode will go out, I feel like you possibly may have already done that stream. So if you have, I will link it in the show notes. And if some of the Coliseum building stuff is up, I will link those in the show notes so people can find these streams that we're talking about as well. I'll try to find that Rome thread and link that as well, because that, for anyone listening, you got to catch this Rome thread. It's fantastic. So I will try to link that to the show notes.
The Rome thread should be the pinned tweet on my Twitter page.
Yes.
Because I have all my Rome and ancient movie watch-alongs in that thread.
Okay, great. Excellent. Yes. Okay, I am so excited. So excited. Okay. I know what I'm doing with my life. But yeah, no, I just think that if I have an expert in Rome, I need to just sit you down and just put on any sort of Roman thing and be like, okay, tell me about it, please.
Yeah.
Just tell me what's good. Is this accurate? Is this not accurate? What's going on? Is this right? Is this wrong? Like, would they have said that? I feel like I have so many questions,
That's something that I love.
Being a Hellenist, I don't know much.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I would love to do with any of these things that I watch, is just watch it with someone else, because sometimes people pick out things that I don't always catch on first glance, because I'm fixated on something entirely. Or I'm too busy cracking jokes about one thing still and just not the bigger picture.
Yeah.
I would love to branch into like the Greek and Hellenistic movies as well, but it's like, oh God, I would need someone else for that. So I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, okay, I'm trying to have a little fun with it. So since you are of Greek heritage, even though you're doing Rome, do you have a favorite Greek-based set, whatever movie? Do you find one particularly represents, your culture well, or not really? Are they all just like, nah?
Yeah, they're kind of mostly the same for the most part. I mean, I think the movie Troy is fun. That's still a really fun movie I like to watch. But I'm trying to think of any other ones. I mean, the Alexander movie was just
no. No. Although I did learn the fun trivia, which was why do they all have Irish accents? Because I've always wondered, like, why, if they're Greek, and then, well, if Alexander himself has the very strong Irish brogue, I was just like, why is his mother then the one with, like, the weird sort of generic Middle Eastern accent? And the trivia I learned was that Colin Farrell tried desperately to drop the accent, but was absolutely incapable of doing it. And so because he couldn't drop the accent, they didn't want him to sound different from everyone else. So they were kind of like, well, all right, we'll make everyone speak with a very Irish accent and just say those are the Greeks. And then we'll make other accents different to differentiate them from the Greek accent that they're not doing. That's why I was like, casting choice. Can you just change your like main character to someone who, you know, maybe is Greek? But no, apparently not.
I was thinking about that earlier today with the movie Spencer, the one about Princess Diana. So they have Kristen Stewart playing Princess Diana, but Kristen Stewart's American, talking with a British accent. Why not just cast a British woman for that role?
I know. That's why I'm very confused. Like everything comes down to, but if you want someone to do this accent, then you could cast someone who that's just their voice.
Right. Like there are many, you know, Greek speaking actors. I mean, for fuck's sake, get Rita Wilson. It's as close as they're gonna get her. I don't know. It's nice. I mean, My Big Fat Greek Wedding's probably the closest representation of Greek life.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Or just I don't know. There's so many like actually good Greek actors. Just get one of them. Like,
right? I mean, it's set in Greece. Just find a Greek person and put them in the movie, right? How hard can it be?
Yeah. So no, when I learned that trivia about Alexander, I was like, I mean, it makes so much sense, but I'm also like, that's just so infuriating because I'm like, well, if he couldn't drop a very noticeable Irish accent, then get someone who doesn't have one.
Should I watch it again now? I don't think I will. I don't want to put myself through that torture.
I mean, you could just for the sheer entertainment value because it's just fucking hilarious. But yeah, you know, I would totally understand if you don't want to do that. For the lull factor.
Yeah, I'll do it for the Twitter.
Twitter thread on Alexander movie.
And why it's a flaming pile of donkey poo. It sounds like something a Greek would say, right?
It does sound like something a Greek person would say. Oh, you're definitely taking advantage of those Greek roots of yours. Perfect. Love it. You know, and then while you're watching it, you know, just maybe swear in like Greek and then, you know, just
Malaka.
Exactly. Just call everyone a fucking Malaka. Just be like, you said that wrong. Malaka. You know, no, that wasn't historically accurate. Malaka. Just you know.
They did so much of that in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Malaka. Malakas.
Those are my favorite. I think I saw in an interview, they were asked to record it like over 100 different times in 100 different tones of voice because they wanted a different emotion behind the intention and the word.
I can't argue with that.
Because someone was like, okay, I want to challenge Michael Antonakos, who did Alexios, and they were like, how would you do a questioning, unsure Malaka? And it was the funniest thing ever because he just kind of got himself all set, and then he like made his eyes like really wide, and he was like, Malaka? You know, and it was like perfect. And I was like, oh my God, this is so priceless. So I was like, I need this recorded in like 100 ways and I need to see all 100 ways. Yeah.
I'm surprised they don't have like a super clip of that.
I know. I'm like, can you just make a blooper reel already? I mean, they have them somewhere, presumably.
Certainly they do in the basements of Ubisoft. Where are they at?
Come on, release this shit. I want to see it. I need this. I need this to be released for my birthday. Birthday present to me from Ubisoft.
That would be a great birthday present, wouldn't it?
It would. They have until September then to find me this reel and present it to me.
If they're listening, step on it.
Yeah. I know. Would it be possible, actually, to do like a whole tweet thread of someone playing the game?
Oh boy, maybe.
And if so, I feel like you'd be the person to do it. I feel like you would have to do it.
Oh, that would be so much work.
It would be so much work, but it would be so much fun. But see, you don't have to play it. You watch someone else play it, and then you just tweet as it's going.
I could probably do that. I don't see why that couldn't be done. I mean, it would definitely have to be a 2-person like team effort for sure. Yeah, like it would be fun to play with even like someone who didn't know any ancient history or Greek history just to see their like instant reaction to this stuff. Like especially with like the introduction of Alcibiades, like just ooh, I'm Alcibiades, hey.
Because I remember when I was playing it, and then we were introduced to Socrates, and then his dialogue was so good. I was like, I wanted to turn to someone and be like, is this something he really would have said? It feels like it. Oh my God, it's brilliant. And of course, I was playing it alone in a dark room, and I was like, I can't ask anyone. And I was so sad.
I understand. The first time I played Assassin's Creed Origins, I was living with my roommate at the time, my former roommate. They really like ancient Egypt a lot, and they've studied it pretty extensively. And so as I'm playing the game, they're just offering commentary like, that shouldn't be there. That ain't right. Why are they doing this? Just things like that. It was just really great. And that's what I like about doing. That's why I like the idea of like doing these things with other people's, because they just offer fresh commentary and things that I don't know. I mean, I admit that I don't know everything about this stuff, and that's why I rely on other people to do it for me. And then I just offer my own commentary and make it a conversation and make it into something funny, because it's just funnier that way. Things are more fun.
Hey, I couldn't agree more. So I'm so here for it. I think you should maybe we tweet some games.
If it gets more movies interested in this stuff, and if it educates people, I see no harm in doing any of this.
Exactly. Okay. Well, now I know who to turn to when I'm like, I need a Twitter thread for this. I need someone entertaining. I know exactly who I'm going to be asking.
I know all that time spent on Twitter really pays off when it comes to tweeting off fiery, funny reactions to things, and no matter how crude they are.
I think it's the GIF and the meme use that's just like perfect placement.
Yeah, who says that's what can't be useful, right?
There's like a meme class somewhere you can take on how to use them properly and where to use them properly. So yeah, I'll have to find where that was, because I know there's some college or university that literally
wait, really?
You can take a class. Yeah, I think it's the New Jersey something art. I don't know. Either way, I was talking to someone who said they were teaching a meme class. So I'm like, I need to know who this is and where this is, because reasons.
That sounds like fun.
I know. I was like, meme class. That's all you have to say. Meme class. And it's like, boom.
Imagine meme class, though. Like, imagine being that person who fails it. Like, how?
I would hope that no one fails a meme class, because if you fail it, I'm just going to be like, you can never use memes again. Yeah, you're banned.
You're banned from the internet, actually.
Yeah. Wow, that would be so hard.
No, actually, you're just banned to Facebook.
Yeah, that's right.
You can only use Facebook from now on. It's like, oh, that's hell.
Ooh, I don't know if I'd like that. I'd be having to retake that class like immediately. Yeah. Anyway, so the last couple questions that I asked to sort of end the interview portion, though, are one, when you were either undergrad or grad student, did you attend office hours?
Sometimes I did. I didn't really start attending office hours more often until it came time to start planning out my dissertation and talking about some research. I always enjoyed the office hours for my seminars, where I just got to have that one-on-one time with the professor and talk about research and things to look into. It was always sort of like a creative brainstorming session for me. And I just like having that one-on-one time where I get to say what I want to say and, just have the undivided attention of someone who knows this stuff better.
Nice. Second question is, do you have like a favorite piece of advice or memory from office hours experience?
I don't know about a favorite memory per se, but as far as advice goes, that's your time to be honest and open about what your interests are, what your goals are, as far as like what it is that you're there to do, whether you're there for a class or dissertation or thesis. Yeah, it's just one of those things where I guess just be honest about what your intentions are, what you plan to do, and the sort of things you're interested in. Because I have found that, like, at least for me, when I was ready to write a paper, I was very set on what I wanted to do, and I was always adamant about sticking with that topic or theme of it. There would have to be room for negotiation here and there, but that was my opportunity to lay my case and, just try to come in prepared with some things to go over. That way, the professor or advisor doesn't, try to take over whatever you're trying to do and set you on another path that maybe you're not interested in or, feel is best for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, that kind of answered my last question, which is, why should someone go to office hours? So I guess this would be the time if you would like to add anything, but otherwise I feel like you've really covered it.
It's good to establish a relationship with your advisor or your professor, especially if you're working with an advisor. Those relationships between student and mentor, it's like a marriage almost. Like, you guys have to like each other and vibe with what each of you are doing and offering. And it's good to find someone that respects and understands what your options and goals are and can help you fulfill that, and get you there at the very least. And for me, at least, it was important for me to work with someone who understood what my interests were and what my goals were after school, which were to not work in academia proper, but to find something doing whatever it took. And that's why I took so many classes, and I tried doing as much as I could, like sort of to become a generalist. And I took a lot of these techie sort of digital classes to make myself more appealing and to do as much as I could, and not limit myself or anything. So yeah.
Nice. Great advice. I don't disagree with any of that.
Yeah.
Definitely, I'm a big proponent of going to office hours.
Yeah. One thing I did want to add, I mean, for my job right now with Invicta, as a social media manager, I also get the opportunity to write video scripts. So I'm actually in the middle of writing a video right now on Roman inflation, and I have another one that's supposed to be coming out soon on Roman empresses. Those are like my first sort of publications that I've done on my own. But as far as seeking like the academic sort of credence, I guess, what I was referring to is more of like the actual like academic publishing and like the formal process of, going through all that. I have my own success online and social media and YouTube eventually, but as far as like making it into the academic world goes, like that's an area that I'm still kind of working on and finding my footing in.
Nice. So at the end of each podcast, though, I ask every guest if they will read Shelley's Ozymandias poem. And then after you've read it, if you would just, tell us, a bit how your thoughts on this poem, how does it make you feel? Do you think it's, a poem that really is worth all the hype? Is it, I don't know, just a random poem? It's.
I will do my best. I've been listening to a lot of your episodes in preparation for this, and I do not offer anything as beautiful or as insightful as your other guests have offered before, but I certainly have my own, thoughts. But yeah, let me read that.
Okay.
I met a traveler from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lays, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, in despair. Nothing besides remain, round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. For me, my first thought is this sort of reads as like a metaphor for empires, the fall of empires, specifically maybe this is my American mindset and the way I've been feeling for the past few years with COVID and all, but yeah, I certainly get a sense that like all great things must come to an end. Powerful figures rise and fall, empires come and go. And it also makes me think of climate change for some reason. There's just a sense of like the end is near, I guess. Yeah, that's sort of what I'm thinking.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's spot on, you know. It's like a memento mori, honestly. I think it is. And I think it's one of the best memento moris we have. You know, it's not a building, it's not a speech, it's not, you know, it's a poem, man. It is a poem that is literally like, hey, y'all are gonna die. You can't do this alone. But like, go ahead if you try. And so I think it's a beautiful political statement by Shelley. And yeah, that impermanence of political power, again, very probably American mindset, but still I think it rings true.
Yeah.
And so, you know, kind of considering the poem that way, you know, the last question I do ask every guest is, if you consider today's society, very, very complicated society, you know, do we have a modern Ozymandias? Do we have something that we think was so great and amazing, but then like realistically, if we look forward, I used to say 1,000 years, but then because, you know, climate change might kill us all in like 200. So I will not be bold enough and say 1,000. So like in 200 years, you know, will that thing still be around, and will it still be such a good idea, or will it have dissolved into, you know, dust, and will we look at it and be like, what were we thinking?
I don't know if there's like a specific person necessarily, but I think the idea of like, I mean, I would like to say capitalism would be one of those things, but I fear that with the system or with the status quo now, that it's going to be very hard to shake off despite the warnings that we have about it. I don't know if there was like a specific person necessarily. Maybe like the states and like these powerful empires, maybe in that respect things will shift, but I don't know right now. I feel like there are things beyond our control that
Yeah, it's okay to not have an answer. I mean, I've gotten some really impressionistic answers. When I started this question, I thought I was going to get a lot of people. And surprisingly, the majority of answers have not been people at all, but like vague concepts. I've had a few people say capitalism. I had someone say the Pax Americana, and I thought that was like the most amazing answer. And I was like, yes,
yeah,
yes. Like, it's going to fucking crumble. It's already crumbling. But I'm like, yes, that is perfect.
yeah.
Because we thought that it was going to last forever, right? And then
You're right, actually. And I was sort of thinking like American foreign policy, actually, and like our idea of like American democracy, like that I can definitely see changing with some time. If the good thing is I feel like we're having those conversations, whether or not they're being amplified. There are conversations being had about that I've noticed since joining Twitter for the past few years, that people are talking about things like that, and like, I mean, even national identity for that matter, and like borders and boundaries are radically shifting.
what are borders?
Yeah, for sure. So those are the sort of things that I see changing rather than people per se. I mean, certainly when I think of like an Ozymandias, I think of like a really big, like egomaniacal figure, perhaps. But even then, like those people don't last very long. At least like they don't stay in, well, hopefully they don't stay in power too long.
Yeah. I know it's a hard one, so it's intentionally sort of hard. Yeah, I feel like the answer always changes, so there's no right or wrong. There's just a good answer in a good moment, and then it'll change. So I'm actually kind of excited. Like, hopefully these podcasts will be around for a very long time, and then if someone listening in like 200 years, if we're still around, hears this, they can hear all the answers that we were saying, and then, you know, check them off like a bucket list. Oh, that came true. No, that was wrong. It'd be very interesting, wouldn't it?
It was interesting because like as I was writing my dissertation and like I felt like the world was falling apart and things were happening because of COVID and all.
Yeah.
It very much gave me third century AD, so to speak. And that poem sort of reminds me of that too, where like the buildings of the past were just in a state of ruin and decay and everything. And the people who built that stuff were long dead and nowhere commemorated on any of that stuff. But the names of the ruling powers above them, you know, still remain. What little there is.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
The 3rd century makes me think a lot about the end of the world and the apocalypse.
That's useful for now. It
Yeah.
really is.
Right.
Sadly, but yes, it's quite useful.
Yeah. I've been writing an episode on Roman inflation lately, so that's just adding into what I'm saying.
Great.
Yeah.
So doomsday on top of doomsday on top of real life. What a great,
Yeah, I'm like, this is
great
exactly
thing.
what I want to deal with. Okay.
Yeah. Very last thing is, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Wolitons Bologna. That's a lot. It's just flying whale in Latin. I'll just say it like that. You can find me on Twitter under that handle as Dr. Christina H. And that is where I am most active. Otherwise, you can find me on a whole bunch of links I have listed on there.
Perfect. Well, I will put those in the show notes so people can go find you in your amazing Twitter threads. So I wanted to thank you one more time for joining me this evening, day, night, whatever time. I don't even know what time it is anymore. It's been super fun, and I hope to have you back at some point.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me here. I'm honored. This is my first podcast invite. I know, it's mega hype, big hype, and hopefully we can actually do something with Legos and pyramid stuff or just anything, because this has been a ton of fun.
Great. Wonderful. Wonderful. Let's do it again in the future.
Absolutely.
Trireme Transit is now departing ancient office hours. Next stop is Present Ponderings.